Today's episode of Chilluminati Podcast is sponsored by Podcorn. And no, it's not a food. We've been doing Chilluminati now for a while. And if you're one of the many people out there who have a podcast, you're well aware of how headache-inducing trying to find sponsorships can be. Recently, however, we've been using Podcorn here at Chilluminati, and for my way of doing things, it is fantastic. Once you get your podcast all signed up and the RSS feed synced in there, you immediately have access to a huge site of listed current ad campaigns and sponsorships all going on as we speak. Each campaign tells you what they're looking for, the budget they're working with, how many ads they have to offer, and more. Any and all of those first basic questions when initially negotiating a sponsorship are taken care of, and you can get right to pitching your podcast as an offer directly to the company. And whether you have a podcast just starting or you've been going at it for a while and you want to explore new sponsorship opportunities and start monetizing your podcast, you can do so by signing up at the link description below. Now, on to the show. Then without further ado, let's dive into it. Hello, everybody. And welcome to Chilluminati Podcast episode 46, which is not a significant number in any way, but it's a significant episode for a myriad of reasons. But before we get to that, I am, as always, one of your hosts, Mike Martin, joined by my two friends and co-hosts, Alex Fasciane. Hello, sir.
If you divide 46 into 2, it's the number 23.
Okay.
The movie with Jim Carrey. Boom.
I've only seen like snippets of that film on YouTube, and that's it.
That movie is like a giant article of like JFK and Lincoln, the coincidences, but it's like an entire movie of that.
What?
That is a accurate statement. You're right. That's
What?
absolutely what it is.
It's literally just like a mentalist's routine, like hidden in a screenplay, basically. It's so weird.
Have you never seen that stuff where it's like JFK was killed on the, it's like, and Lincoln was that whole thing that's like, it's just all coincidences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
I'm changing my bonus episode to Lincoln and Kennedy coincidences.
Fantastic.
Great,
done.
Which is a
Before we
perfect segue into our Patreon.
Sell us car salesman, then we can let Jesse introduce himself.
Guys, Jesse Cox is also here, but let me tell you where he also is at patreon.com/ChilluminatiPod, where you can become a patron today, and every day, you know the misery, you know the sadness, you know the bad vibes of getting to the end of one of these episodes and having no more Chilluminati to listen to. Well, let me tell you what, not only this episode, but every episode we've ever recorded since we started the Patreon, there is a 15-minute, and that's lenient. I say some of these are a bit longer than that.
I was gonna say, I think out of all of them, only one of them is 15 minutes.
One of them is under 15 minutes. Let's be clear.
Or that.
There's a lot more Chilluminati out there, folks. It's just like the truth in the X-Files. It's out there, and you can go get it at patreon.com/ChilluminatiPod, and you at the $15 level and above can get those episodes.
So shameless.
It is shameless, but you know what? It worked. It totally worked.
We have weekly episodes now. We hit that goal super early, so thank you to everybody who jumped over there and really just supported the show to make sure that we can dedicate the time. Really, this whole episode, this whole series has been an insane project for a while now, and I'm excited to do it. I'm particularly excited to take our other co-host along with us, Jesse, because hey, Jesse, how's it going? A, and B, you aren't ready, dude. You just I know you might even think you are ready, but I promise you, you are not.
Here's the thing. I know I'm ready to tell you how crazy this is. So I can't wait. Wait. Should be fun.
It's bananas. This one, I mean, this one's been a long time coming. Way back 2 years ago now, maybe over 2 years ago now. we did episode 2 on Skinwalkers.
You made a lot of promises about this.
I did.
Few
There's a lot of
episodes.
weight. I'm sweating,
Yeah,
dude.
if it stinks and if I can shoot this down easy, I'm gonna let you know I'll be real disappointed. I expect
right.
this to be one of those things where it's like, don't you see, Jesse? You were the Skinwalker all along, and I'd be like, oh.
Here's the thing. Skinwalker Ranch, crazy or not, right? It is unavoidable that it is like the mecca of this type of vibe. Like all the types of different cases that we've covered over this entire whatever you call it. Like this entire span of 2 years or so. That
Are
we've
you
been doing
telling
this
me
podcast.
that it all connects here? This is the Pepe
Dude,
Sylvia.
everything
What?
is at
It's not,
Skinwalker
you're
Ranch.
not even necessarily wrong that it all connects
There's
here
no
in a weird way.
BS. Already calling BS.
But before
Everything connects here? BS.
Wait till you see how the
Alex-
lighthouse disappearances.
Bro, yeah, exactly.
Number 10
Alex,
will blow your
early
mind.
on in this series, you actually said in an episode that Skinwalker is kind of the first step into that first deeper layer of just kind of conspiracy and weirdness. And I agree. And so those who've been with this show for a while, this is a step beyond. And so while I anticipate this to be bare minimum 3 episodes, I'm looking at possibly a 4-episode arc here.
Dude,
So
I'm
we're-
looking at a 4-episode JFK too. I'm there.
So we're moving into this pretty heavily. And like I said, back in episode 2, when we talked about it, still to this day, probably one of my favorite episodes, simply to have put together the lore and the stories that kind of come along with Skinwalkers are really insane. And they're really kind of cool in a grim, dark fantasy sort of way. I always imagine them as like I said in that episode, the evil druid prestige class. That's how it kind of came off.
It's definitely like American McGee presents Skinwalker Ranch. There's
Yes, it
huge
really can.
potential.
I agree. Yeah, let's get a game out there. Let's go. But during that episode, I offhandedly talked about Skinwalker Ranch, and I said that someday we would do this place as a series, and I would do everything to make sure that we do it to the fullest extent possible. So, baby, here we friggin' are. It's nonstop from here.
Look behind yourself. That's your naive self that you're waving goodbye to behind you.
Yes, goodbye. That's the one with your third eye closed.
That's
third
your
eye is
gravity.
going to-
That's your Gravity Falls self, and you're about to walk forward and become Agent Cooper in the lodge.
You're gonna dissipate.
You're going away.
Yeah, we're going to the lodge, and there is no coming back to
Yeah.
normal after you go into the lodge.
Twin
They all
Peaks got canceled for 30 years or something.
But they got to come back, right?
Eventually,
And they eventually
yes.
got to come back. And for those of you who have never heard of Skinwalker Ranch, because we get a lot of new listeners very recently, you are in for something you aren't ready for. And if Jesse ain't ready, nobody's ready. But before we fully
Y'all
dive
keep saying
in,
I'm not ready. I don't know what this is.
listen, before we dive in, I need to first thank the assistant researcher who helped me out on this one, Deanna, the very same one who helped out with the Mothman series. She's just phenomenal, phenomenal. I also want to pimp our 2 main sources we use for research, if you're the kind to read along. The first one is the book Hunt for the Skinwalker by authors Colm Keller, PhD. Listen, he put PhD on the book. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the script. And George Knapp also wrote with that. Now, I think George Knapp is somebody both Jesse and Alex both know.
Coast to coast
Hopefully
AM,
Jesse
baby.
doesn't take a Jesse nap after this episode.
A Jesse Knapp. Yeah, he's mostly known as the coast to coast the coast
One
to
of
coast
them.
guy.
One of them.
Yeah, I mean,
One
I
of
he's
think
them.
weekends maybe sometimes.
Yes.
I think he's an award-winning journalist too.
That's what I want to
get
get into real quick, because that's kind of what he's known for, right? He's kind of known for that stuff. But if you don't know that he's best known for, if you only know him as the Coast to Coast, one of the hosts of Coast to Coast AM, there's a lot more for you to learn. Honestly, before George Knapp produced a TV series in the 80s that was diving into UFOs, which was kind of his first step into that world, that's what many say tarnished his record and his career forever, to always be kind of cast as that guy. Before that, he was insanely accomplished. He was a reporter, a co-anchor, and more. Knapp had won a huge amount of awards over the years. And I'm going to list a couple right here. So Jesse and Alex, I need you to sound impressed and really awed that George Knapp was
Wow.
accomplished. Here we go. 2 regional Edward Murrow Awards.
Yo, the Edward R. Murrow Award, that's a good award.
He then won the National Edward Murrow Award for investigative stories on voter registration fraud.
That's a legitimate award.
He was a 9-time winner of the Mark Twain Award for Best News Writing from the Associated Press.
That's pretty wild.
24 regional Emmys, and his 1990 series on UFOs was selected by the United Press International as best in the nation for individual achievement by a journalist. And
So
that's
he's
just a
so
sample.
he's legit.
He's legit.
He's like
a
the
legit
original.
dude.
He's like the original that guy.
He is. And what's funny is that the thing that kind of tarnished his record in the 80s was the reporting of a story on UFOs about one particular man, none other than Bob Lazar. And we all now know Bob Lazar is like somebody that's been on like
guy.
Joe Rogan and all these other bigger things. And it was a kind of a bigger story and some might even say might taken a little more seriously, but his reporting on Bob Lazar is what really tarnished his record to start in the late 80s, which is crazy to me. Especially after like a history of working in the industry and winning awards like that. But the other source, sorry,
he's like
go
a
ahead.
professional. He's like a professional conspiracy theorist.
Yes, he really is.
Bob Lazar is that, and I feel like there's like an odd reflection of the two in each other. It's really weird.
It is kind of weird. You're not wrong. The other book that we read, and if you want to grab this one too, it's called Lost on Skinwalker Ranch by Eric T. Retz. It is a book of true accounts of a property guard on the ranch. It's pretty small, really easy read. And shout out to the Discord for the patrons. They have like a book club going now. And so they're going to be reading. I think they're going to try and read along as best they can. But if you all want to read along as well, we have I don't know how hard it is to get the physical copy of some of these books, but you can definitely get the audio copy of Hunt for the Skinwalker for like $10 on Amazon. So you can at least attain it in some way.
Sweet.
And it's an easy read and it's a fun read as well. So it's a good time. It's a good time. This will also be, this is going to be an interesting episode. Again, Deanna, a big shout out to her. So let's go. So Skinwalker Ranch is insane. While its namesake is certainly the reason interest was sparked in the first place, since we, as said, skinwalkers are kind of cool and wild to learn and read about in like a weird evil fantasy setting sort of way, either excitedly or maybe even disappointingly, Skinwalker Ranch isn't really about skinwalkers. It's pretty much anything but a place with skinwalkers in it. So what is Skinwalker Ranch? Well, that's the question we're going to try to answer in about 3 to 4 episodes. But I think by the end of it, even with all the context, the question might still be left in the air. But I'm hoping that when we walk away from this, there is a different context in which you say, I don't know what's going on Skinwalker Ranch, as opposed to just curiosity, but more of like an interest in the happenings of the area. The ranch itself is about 500 acres of land settled deep in the Uintah Basin in Uintah County, and you guessed it, the state of Utah. It's also got a few other names it's known by, including Gorman Ranch or the UFO Ranch. And now, when I say this place is insane, we're going to list a few of the things here that help frame as to why it's insane. Keep in mind, these are a small sampling of over 100 claimed incidents that have happened on Skinwalker Ranch, and these are just a small sample, but far from all of them. You have your typical cattle mutilations and straight-up cattle disappearances, UFOs in the skies almost nightly, sometimes accompanied by orbs that are flying in the sky, but also fly down to ground level.
Just think about UFOs nightly. Just think about that.
See them up there constantly.
Think about
sometimes
reports
single,
nightly.
Sometimes a trio of them. Sometimes one that hovers for a long time and then darts out of the way. Your typical shapes, as well as weird triangular shaped ones. And then you have glowing balls of light that seemingly intelligently interact with the family to almost like toy with them. On top of that, seeing windows, and I say windows with air quotes, in the sky that seem to be opening up into some other plane, dimension, realm of existence in a very psychedelic way that you would see if you were taking some things. Oh, Jesse's already shaking his head. We're not even there.
It's like when they look in the water in The Wizard of Oz and they see each other through the water.
Right. Or like, no, imagine you're looking into the sky, right? And it's like the night sky, but there's this giant square part of it that you're seeing like this dark red sun or this bizarre otherworldly colors that doesn't match. Or you have light in the sky, and this is like the square that's pitch black and has nothing in it. Absolutely
Not to mention
nothing.
UFOs nightly.
Almost nightly.
But
Not
just think
all.
about that. Like, even if it's every other night, like,
Right.
imagine what your life would be like if you had sightings of UFOs every night.
Dude, I panic enough when I'm outside smoking weed, looking at a star, and I think it
There's
vibrates
your problem.
a little. And I'm like, oh, it's moving. But I stare at it, hoping it might move, but it never moves.
I plead with the devil to move the star. But he never does.
That's my next deal with the devil, dude. Just let me.
But I don't
let the grays take
understand.
it.
If this happens all the time, then why aren't people out there all the time just looking up and taking photos?
Well, it's private land.
Okay, but we're gonna get there, and this is there was a group that went out there and did investigation for months, and we're gonna get to them later. They're
Of course.
later on. They're like episode 3. For now, we're not there yet. On top of that, also invisible objects that emit some sort of destructive magnetic field that power down things and burn areas of the land. And the final one of my favorite ones, and we'll talk about a few of the encounters of these, are huge animals that are not only seemingly intelligent and understand what's happening, but are also immune to bullets in some fashion. And what I mean is a wolf, for an early example that's in the book, is a wolf that is 3 times larger than any normal wolf, that is sitting there being shot as it's trying to rip the head off of one of their new cattle on the ranch, being shot at with their guns over and over, and flesh is flying off. Think Doom Eternal style. And the thing does not react to it. And it seems like it doesn't exist. And then it runs into the woods, and they track it, following its tracks through the mud because it had recently rained. And then the tracks just end. Gone. They lose the thing completely. That's the kind of sample.
I mean, that sounds pretty Skinwalker-y to me.
Right, but a Skinwalker is a person.
Right.
That's the difference. This is more of like a weird cryptid. Skinwalkers are people who feed on fear and are vulnerable to silver and all this other stuff.
Yeah, this is like the inciting incident of a horror movie, what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's insane.
Shooter! Like,
And-
literally.
And the thing is, like, a lot of these things might seem disconnected on the surface. Like, what does one have to do with the other? But all of them have this bizarre, weird, constantly claimed, rather, bizarre, weird intelligence behind them. That they, like, the things, knowing they're interacting with these people, but they're not quite right. Something's always off or wrong. And we will get into that when we talk about the family and their personal experiences when they lived on the ranch for the 1.5 years, I believe it was, before they sold it and just left the place. And we'll talk about them next episode. But maybe hearing this next bit is also unsurprising after hearing all of the above. But many, many, many people believe that this area of land, the basin, the Uintah Basin specifically, is cursed. And since we're going to be going weekly now, I want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and bringing about as much detail as we can. So I don't say all this to dangle all that stuff above to, like, in front of you and tease you, the listeners and stuff, and then yank it away. But we're setting a groundwork as to why it's so important we talk about the history of the Uintah Basin and where people believe, if this is real, some of this might be coming from. Because another thing that's it's called, while it's not necessarily always called a curse, is a flap. And I've used the term flap before, specifically talking about UFO flaps. And a flap is like where an area of geographical land where constant sightings of UFOs happen over a very specific period of time.
A part of
Sometimes
the world where the barrier between is thinned in some way.
And following that particular quote, a lot of people believe, and after I've done my reading, if I was to say it's one thing over another, it definitely feels like it's what's thin flap of reality, that there's something on the other side that is kind of like leaking into our world and intelligently interacting with us and exploring things. Because a lot of the wolf story, for instance, it's like it understands what a wolf looks like, how it's comprised, like, physically, and, like, how it's made physically out of material and stuff, but, like, doesn't understand pain. It doesn't really feel pain because it's not really all here. And things like that. And in the UFOs, again, UFOs are people claim, some people believe they come through thin veils of reality. Jesse, don't fall out on me yet here.
I'm not falling out. What you're talking is gibberish, but I'm not falling out.
Well, okay.
The things that are coming out of your mouth are like, you're asking me to take logical leaps, which is fine.
Okay.
I'll jump with you, but none of it's based in science fact. I'm just letting you know.
Before we jump, a UFO flap is nothing more than an area where UFOs are seen commonly, like a lot.
Right, it's
over
nothing
time.
more than that. It's nothing even more than that. A
Well,
place
like the
where
Phoenix
UFOs
Lights.
hang out.
The Phoenix Lights would be an example of like a UFO flap where a fuck ton of people saw the same thing
Yeah,
on the
it's
same
like
night.
it's just like a flurry of activity in
A localized flurry of very particular activity, and this has
Or
so
flap. Yeah.
much. Yes, like a flap, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's important because like I really do walk away from this feeling like it's so much of everything. There's also like poltergeist activity in their house and all kinds of stuff. We won't be able to cover all of it. It's just too much. But there's so much of it. It's everything in one spot, and it's really bizarre and very, very rare for that to ever even happen. Now, whether we believe the family or not, that'll be something I think we talk about much more in episode 2, because we're going to rewind and go further back. We want to talk about, like I said, the history of the region. The area in question is Uintah County in the heart of the Basin. It's about 44,000 square miles, and more than 25,000 people actually live there. They are on average primarily Mormons, but a tenth of the population is still Ute Indian. It's a mostly ranching and farming economy with livestock, hay, alfalfa, and all that kind of stuff down there. Fun fact, geologists describe this area as, quote, an unusually rich source of hydrocarbon-bearing materials.
How does that happen?
Oh, we're about to get there.
Okay.
And Uintah County officials refer to the area as Dinosaur County. What do those two have in common? It basically means a bunch of dinosaurs died there, and there's a hell of a lot of oil. There's a ton of oil in the basin. Second fun fact, there's a geographic feature known as Skinwalker Ridge that has a symbol carved on it, discovered by Tom Gorman, one of the family members on the ranch, that some to believe to be Masonic in origin. Nobody really knows. And when you Google Skinwalker Ridge carving, I could not find it. My Google foo is either terrible or there's no picture. There's just a lot of other pictures that end up popping up and stuff from there.
Interesting.
Yeah. Again, just kind of a weird situation. Now, the real tragedy of the area is what we're going to talk about very briefly here as well as we kind of push on. Of course, we were not the first ones to settle there by any stretch. As we said, the Ute Native people were the first to live there, and they lived in the basin, and it was inhabited by them then and is still inhabited by them for over 12,000 years. Then along came the white man who entered the basin with the Spanish expeditions led by Fathers Dominguez and Escalante in the 1770s, which would then shortly be followed by an expedition about 100 years later by the then leader of the Mormons, Brigham Young, in the 1860s to see if they could take their people there to settle, because they were having some recent trouble trying to fit their new little religion into normal society, and people kept throwing them out to the point where the original, the originator of Mormonism, John Smith, I think is his name, right? Like it's John Smith.
Yeah, the main dude.
He got shot.
Yeah.
He got shot and killed.
He got killed, and so now they're trying to get out of here. So they Brigham Young in the 1860s sent an expedition out to this area.
I've seen Book of Mormon. Please, I get it.
I haven't seen Book of Mormon, actually. I've never seen
this
Book of
whole
Mormon.
story, if you want to know. But
I'm sure.
song.
Well, I mean, there's like another half of the story that's
Right.
But
But
about
like,
the missionaries. Yeah.
Yeah, so they were having
know.
issues, and they were just looking to get away. And where else do people get away in this time than west, where there's like no law at all? But
Salt
funnily
Lake
enough,
City.
But funnily enough, the initial reviews from the expedition were bad, so they just moved on elsewhere.
They were
showed
like,
up.
fuck it.
Yeah, they showed up. They're like, 1 star. No,
Nah,
thank
this
you.
seems sus. Let's get out of here, boys.
I'm not into the area.
I'm not staking the church on this.
Fair enough. But unfortunately, that wouldn't be the last time in the Ute Indians' lives that they would be affected by Mormon decisions, as the following year in 1861, President Abraham Lincoln established the Uintah Indian Reservation that essentially was the entirety of the basin. And this was done because the Mormons were having conflicts with the other native Utes that were living 150 miles away out in Provo Valley, in the Provo Valley region. So all the natives Utes there were forced to march 150 miles east to the Basin where they would now end up living, where other Native Utes already were living.
So they sent them to make like a buffer zone?
So the Abraham Lincoln just said, okay, this area is now the reservation. Now the Mormons who are having problems with the Utes, we'll just take all the Utes and move them to the Basin so the Mormons don't have any more problems.
Damn.
And that was like their first shift of natives out that way. But unfortunately, that wasn't the end. In 1880, the Mormons once again would return and stay this time, encroaching further into their land, but giving them less land to operate on. Unsurprisingly, the story doesn't even end there, because 5 years later, in 1885, the miners then began to move in and prospect their lands, which was at the time incredibly illegal because it was considered conserved land, reservation, etc. But
it's like mining in a national park or something,
yeah,
basically,
but
right?
3 years later, all 7,000 acres of land that the prospectors had wanted was then flipped to public domain, and they could do as they pleased.
So they were already mining on the land, and then they eventually bought it?
Eventually the government flipped it over to public domain, and that time it just meant it was lawless and not, like a reservation.
Oh, you can just do whatever the fuck you want on it.
You could do whatever the hell you want on the land. And so the miners, they were mining and prospecting anyway, and then the government just basically said, okay, whatever, just do it.
That is crazy.
Yeah. Already, and again, the land already at that time is well, it was inhabited. Obviously, we took it, and we know how that story goes. We learn it over and over again. But it's important, again, to remind ourselves it was happening literally all over the U.S. It was happening.
So the line we're trying to draw here to Skinwalker Ranch present day is that
this land became quote unquote cursed.
It's like abandoned tribal land.
Yes, exactly.
Got it. Okay.
It's like that kind of thing. Moreover, if we rewind to the 1770s, talking about the initial people who showed up, Fathers Dominguez and Escalante, they journaled their exploration up this way, and they would talk about seeing giant fireballs in the sky often and such. And so whether that is just, whether it was just a meteor or something that came through the sky.
Did they say it was almost nightly?
It happened more than once, but not almost nightly.
Could be the same. I think
2 or 3 times.
Could be the same UFOs.
That's the prevailing theory. Is that I guess the way he describes them, how big they were, it would be surprising if it was a meteor, but we will never really know because he could have just had who knows, just kind of just had a very romantic night or something. Fuck, who knows why he saw it the way he saw it. But if what's said on Skinwalker Ranch is true, then there might be ties that go all the way back to the 1770s. Prior to that, during that whole time, though, a whole new reservation was also set up on the land in 1881. So rewinding a little bit more, to hold all the Utes that had been then ousted that what would eventually become Colorado. So in 1881, during all that time, they were cramming more natives into one small basin area, sparking even more potential for conflict. The U.S. government is already worried that they were going to attack the U.S. on their march over there. They didn't know if that gathering them all into one area would spark conflict amongst within the natives themselves, or if they would try to rebel and reclaim their land. And this was clearly a concern for the U.S. government because in 1886, they sent Major Frederick Benteen with the 9th U.S. Cavalry to establish an outpost where the Uintah and Duchesne rivers end up meeting. Which means 75 cavalrymen, which were the famous Buffalo Soldiers that we all know, and the 150 white. Song. Yeah, it's really good. And 150 white infantrymen who arrived first prior to all of that. And according to a formal tribal police officer, the land that the Utes live on today, right now, is a former graveyard for fallen Buffalo Soldiers.
So that conflict resulted in those Buffalo Soldiers dying?
They had conflicts with them. And so the Buffalo, but also for the Buffalo Soldiers that ended up dying out in the wilds, maybe scouting or whatnot.
I see, so they just bring them and put them
for
there.
Dying.
It was just a general purpose cemetery.
Like a grave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Sometimes the word graveyard to me seems like mystical in some way. I don't know. I always think
just because of what comes along with the thought.
Like when you say it's a graveyard, I imagine everybody who was there died there, but I don't know why. If you told me it was a cemetery, I would never think that, but I don't know why. I don't know why the word graveyard conjures up magical dream worlds for me.
Huh. Is it a happy dream world?
Must be the ranch,
Yeah.
It must be the ranch.
It must be the ranch. It was the ranch sending those dream world vibes.
I
your
love
way.
that you were like, is it a happy dream world? This graveyard that you...
No, I was just
Hey,
imagining
what?
like
I was best friends with a goth kid for a long time. All right, you know.
I
well, you
believe
were just
that.
like
I believe
you were
that.
just like it
Yeah.
became. They said that this land was a graveyard of buffalo soldiers.
where the Utes live now today.
Right,
yeah.
and I was imagining that you were saying like one day somebody killed all the buffalo soldiers.
Oh, gotcha,
Yeah, yeah.
gotcha.
And
No,
they
no.
buried them and then lived on top of them. No, that's what we do to the natives,
Yeah,
Alex.
that's exactly what we
Please.
did to them. We herded them from what was a Colorado and then further north into one little area and forced them to stay there. And we definitely made up for it later in life.
I'm just imagining.
Casinos, I
some,
think,
like,
worked that all out, right? We're fair and square.
Yeah, we're fine. It's everything good. Everything
Yeah,
I'm just
everything's
imagining some
fine.
like movie that's like a Ute film about like ghostly like cavalrymen showing up and they're like, "You didn't move the bodies!"
Just yelling at them. It's why we can't rest. Despite the outpost being there, however, the land was actually still considered very, very lawless. It was public domain, which meant that it was prime real estate for all kinds of businesses from all kinds of ne'er-do-wells, from brothels to saloons and more. And they all set up in one little area, bringing together white people, black people, Native Americans, miners, soldiers who, quote, were not supposed to be there. It was against the rules for them to go visit this area, known as the Duchesne Strip. It also attracted a bunch of different prostitutes and outlaws, big ones too. Butch Cassidy actually showed up there to hide out, as did LZ Lay. They actually both hid out in this area.
All on the same land.
In the Duchesne Strip, where all the saloons and brothels popped
Yeah.
up in this lawless land. That's where they got to freaking hang out. I thought that was super dope. Butch Cassidy is a fun story.
It's just crazy how it being this place and then becoming all these different things is just because one dude was like, "All right, that's the spot now," and then everybody was just like, "Okay."
Yep. And well, right, like you say, like we gave them a reservation to establish it for themselves, when in reality what we said was, this land's ours now, but we kind of feel bad, so you can have this spot.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's ridiculous, and it should never have happened, obviously, and it's a tragedy that it happened in the first place.
Well, it's just crazy that it was like the government did it. It like removed a tribe from their like ancestral lands. And then on top of that, instead of it just being like 200 years later, somebody built a house on it. It's like, no, from that point onward until now, there has been like activity on this ancestral land, which is like, if we're setting a precedent for like, later paranormal activity, I feel like that's important to mention.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. And it's fun to know too of the Duchesne Strip and this weird, like, kind of wild America that popped out. Fun other fact: there was a place between the strip and the river where there was like a little ravine where they would just huck their bottles. Everybody would just huck all their bottles, and it eventually became known as Bottle Hole, and still is called Bottle Hole to this day.
Is it literally a hole?
It's a ravine that everybody just tossed their beer
How
bottles.
filled
and shit
with
in.
bottles is it? Now this interests me. Is it like a lot of glass down there, or is it empty and time took the bottles away?
So today, Bottle Hole covers 420 acres, blaze it, and it's a popular fishing spot.
Oh, all right.
That's
cool
all it is
anymore.
now.
Is
Wait
it like
a minute.
Animal Crossing?
It's a
where you
popular
fish and
fishing
a bottle
spot.
Comes out?
Time out! On this death ranch, it's a popular fishing spot?
It's just on the
in
land.
this area in the basin. The basin. The ranch is in the basin, but it's not the size of the basin. The whole basin is believed to be no bueno. Don't go there. You're like,
But
the 25,000 people
it's got
live
good
there.
fish.
But it's also, the thing is, like, if you do research on this, I first of all, I'd love to fish there. I think that'd be super
It's not
fun.
scary in the daytime. Like,
Yeah, exactly. But no, you have to understand this area, Skinwalker Ranch, this Uintah Basin is known as part of an area that's known as, much like there's Tornado Alley, there is UFO Alley. And this hits that area because there's a ton of UFO sightings over there. An enormous number of them. Aliens exist, Jesse. Just let me have this.
the thing that is crazy about Skywalker Ranch,
Skywalker Ranch.
Yeah, the thing that's crazy about Skywalker Ranch is that George Lucas lives there. It's just crazy because I don't know what you're imagining, but it's very like orange soil, rocks, and brush. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like a lot of the times people imagine when you talk about paranormal events happening in the wilderness, you're imagining like almost like New Orleans looking shit happening, like swamps and trees. And Skinwalker Ranch is like, it's a popular fishing spot in this basin because it's like a big, flat, open, wide.
Open.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous, though. Like, it's beautiful. To kind of just seeing pictures of that area, it's really, really nice. But that kind of like that history of that tragedy, then there comes the rumors out of that I don't want to kind of touch on too much because there's very little evidence that a lot of these supposed things happened, these encounters between the Utes and the cavalry and stuff. I personally don't doubt that there was interchanges between them and there was battles and stuff, but there's all kinds of like rumors about these ceremonies that the Utes did with the captured soldiers that they had to curse them in the land for however long by slitting their throat or removing limbs and like ripping out their bowels. That stuff to me comes across as like way too popcorn flicky 1990s and almost like
how is it not every newspaper, every story?
Because, to its degree, remember, the outpost is literally how many hundreds of miles away from civilization. There's like, they're at a small outpost and they're not allowed to go to the area beyond out to the strip and stuff. And they're only there to kind of keep the peace. I'm not saying it's not possible that shit happened and didn't really hit the newspapers till either way later than it mattered. But I don't know if like you said, like, I don't know if I believe like the weird rituals that ended up happening here.
It just seems so specific and like detailed for like something that there's no like establishing of in the record at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That type of stuff, it's always so hard because it makes these places seem crazy when the stuff that is really like unexplainable that happens here that's that is mentioned is really interesting. This type of stuff is weird because it kind of like ruins the reputation of these kinds of places.
Yeah, and like while they're kind of like fun stories to tell in a popcorn kind of scummy sort of way, at the same time too, like it's all these stories are coming from people that are like, well, I know somebody who knows a Ute whose grandma told them the story of like how it all happened and whatnot. It's like, whether that's even believable or not in the first place, because everybody lies on the internet, so I don't want to give too much time or attention to them. But beyond that alone, with what they did and relocating them and forcing them to live in this kind of really small, unbearably kind of weird area that only has very little type of farming to it, moving them hundreds of miles away, forcing them to march, is tragedy in and of itself. Which brings us up to more modern day stuff and Skinwalker's Ranch personal little history. We already talked about the size and what the sightings and stuff that have happened at the ranch. But the ownership of the ranch is also a story in and of itself, because for the most part, it was only owned by an elderly couple, an unnamed elderly couple that we do not know who they are, that owned the ranch from sometime in the 1950s all the way to 1994. As far as we know, they never actually lived at the ranch. They simply owned it and they would visit it once a year to do like fence checkups and stuff. And they only had workers work the ranch occasionally, but they never really put any money into it. Then in the fall of 1994, that's when and we're going to call them the Gorman family just simply for namesake, because they do change the name in the book. And even though I think the real name might be known, I don't want to really worry or risk it. But the Gorman family bought this ranch in 1994 in the fall of it, and they owned it for 15 months. So they owned it for a year and 3 months before they ended up selling it again. And then they're the people we're going to be talking about in episode 2. After that, they sold it to Robert Bigelow, the founder of the National Institute for Discovery Sciences, in 1996 for $200,000, which would be about $3.3 million in today's money.
Not bad.
No, not bad at all. This little institute he had, the National Institute for Discovery Science, was privately owned research institute founded in 1995 to study fringe science and other para and supernatural events, such as ufology. So that, to answer your question, Jesse, that's what we talk about in episode 3, like those people who kind of bought it and studied there. It became defunct in 2004, however. Then it was kind of like left in this purgatory. The Skinwalker Ranch was kind of left up in the air. And then in 2016, it was bought up by Adamantium Holdings, a shell corporation of unknown origin in 2016.
Named after the metal that Wolverine's claws are made of.
I'm looking this up. I'm going down this rabbit hole. By all means,
do it, dude.
continue.
It's a whole
Adamantium Holdings?
Adamantium Holdings, a shell corporation of unknown origin in 2016. I'm going to read the next little bit. When it was purchased by the corporation, all roads leading to the ranch have been blocked off, the perimeter secured and guarded by cameras and wire, and surrounded by signs that warn to aim people to prevent them from approaching the ranch.
Can I shut up? Shut up. Are you? I want everyone to know this. I want everyone to know this right now.
Last month.
So I typed in Adamantium Holdings.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, maybe we'll get some information. Mathis, I have a question for you.
Oh, no.
Are you involved in any way?
No.
Be honest with us.
I'm
because
not.
I typed in Adamantium Holdings, and the first listing is the connection between Bob Lazar and Skinwalker Ranch, and it says there's no information about Adamantium Holdings. The second listing on my Google search, again, never typed this in before. I have no cookies, nothing.
Oh, no.
With how excited Mathis seems about Skinwalker Ranch, and it links to the Reddit Chilluminati podcast page. That's number 2. That's number 2.
I'm telling you, dude, I didn't do anything.
Are you sure you're not
involved?
Are you sure this isn't a long con for Adamantium Holdings where you're like, guys, I hear they've got great products?
You just burst my bubble, dude. Now, if that's the case, I got to edit this out.
Yeah, what's all that X-Men memorabilia I see on the shelf behind you?
No, turn the camera off. I can't look. Dude, that's wild. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Because in March,
Holdings.
Because in March of 2020, aka last month, Brandon Fugel, this tells you how recently we were still researching this thing. Brandon Fugel, a 46-year-old real estate magnate, revealed he was the owner of the ranch. And I actually have a photo of him right now, and he looks like somebody who would own the ranch.
What's his name again?
Brandon Fugel. Fugal. He is the current owner of Skinwalker Ranch. The name Skinwalker Ranch was filed for trademark in 2017 through Justia Trademarks and officially given the trademark in 2018.
So this is the guy from the show. I haven't seen the show, but he's one of the guys that's on the show.
Oh, the new Skinwalker Ranch show that just came out?
Man. Yeah, I haven't watched that. I have not watched that.
No, I've just seen the commercials. I haven't watched the show yet.
Yeah, it literally started this year, I think, right?
It started like a week ago or something. Yeah, he's very rich.
Yes, he is very rich.
Dude, he's just buying shit all the time on Colliers.
Well, there
Dude,
you go.
He's buying like $2 million buildings.
Yeah. He's a real estate magnate, dude.
Tennessee, Florida, Arizona. Dude, this guy is wheeling and dealing.
Is he buying all in UFO Valley?
Apparently, he is or was the #1 commercial real estate agent in Utah.
Well, there you go. Damn.
I'm talking, there's like 10 pages of purchases by him.
I believe
this is
that.
insane. He owns a lot of shit. That's crazy.
He also is a giant nerd. He has a giant Han Solo frozen in carbonite.
So that's
if you're willing to invest in a giant life-size Han Solo, you've got money and you are a giant nerd. And this guy,
you already own a company called Adamantium Holdings. In that case,
yeah.
It's true, man. It's wild. There's also like stories that one of the ways that things were cursed in this is that and again, one of the origins of the name Skinwalker Ranch is an actual Skinwalker witch cursed the lands after the white man came and started, and that she specifically weakened the veil between our reality and the reality of whatever, and that the permanent curse that lays across the basin will never be lifted, and as long as that we're around, etc. Like that's the kind of thing that you can read in like the Hunt for the Skinwalker book, that if you want like that idea of like where it comes from. Me specifically, I really wanted episode 1 to be much more about the actual history of it, so that when we dive into the insanity stuff next week, it's you can understand, you can kind of come at it from someone who understands the history of the area as a whole. But that's
I'm
it.
trying
for
to cross-reference
episode 1.
Brennan Fugel with Mike Martin, see what I can figure out.
You're not going to find anything, dude. I don't look like that.
Is it covered up that easy, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, listen, man, if Adamantium Holdings got covered up that easy, he got covered up. He can cover it up just that easy.
So
well.
even just right now, right? Let's forget about any of the crazy like shit about the wolf or any of that shit, any of the like magic elements of this. At the very least, we're talking about land that has been in demand or in use by Americans pretty much as soon as we could get it.
As soon as we came into contact with it, we wanted it.
It has oil.
There's a ton of oil. Yeah, there's a fuck ton of oil there.
It has oil. It has some kind of crazy, like, soil, right? There's some element in the soil.
It's just the hydrocarbonated whatchamacallit. Like it's just exactly. Basically it helps make the soil a different kind. It's just,
what is that? Is that like valuable?
It's just a scientific term for an area that has a fuck ton of oil. Like that's the scientific term.
Okay, I see. So that's
of it.
just like the signifier for oil.
Yes, exactly.
All
An
right.
unusually rich source of hydrocarbon bearing materials.
And it was owned by one family for like 50 years.
Oh, the ranch itself was owned from the 1950s to 1994.
Yeah.
Then it was owned by the Gorman family for 15 months. And then
they were like,
left.
fuck this.
They bounced, exactly. The whole family left. And that's this family of 4, I believe, maybe 5 that lived there. They left. And then it was bought by this guy. Then it was bought, by the Adamantium Holdings and stuff. And then
which was this guy in secret.
Yeah, which is this guy here.
So he was buying the ranch in secret and then
super secured it.
Yeah. And now there's a show about it. And it has oil. And he's on the show.
Well, the Basin is oil rich.
Right. But does the ranch have oil on it?
No, I believe he took the ranch. So my theory about this particular guy is he simply saw money in the ranch. And I think that's why he bought it, and he just like money in like a television special,
right?
In some fashion. I don't know if he did any research. I have no idea if he actually did anything with the ranch specifically. I guess that's being told in the series right now, but I'm not watching it. I didn't want to watch the series and do this.
Yeah, no, I'm saving it till after we're done. I'm gonna watch it, but it has the vibes. I saw the trailer, and it has the vibes of like the Oak Island show. I don't know if you've seen that, where they the Oak Island hole. Maybe that's a mystery Jesse can do one day. So
the show where they plant stuff and then are like, we discovered a thing.
I mean, they don't really. I mean, they just like dig a hole in the ground basically the whole show. But I'm interested to see if this show ends up being more documentary in nature or more like a reality show about a team of guys trying to figure something out.
Yep.
Because I don't know which it is, but it kind of has that vibe, and I'm worried that it's going to just destroy the reputation of this place. But we'll see. Yeah,
we're gonna go into it just simply looking at the Gorman family's experiences. Then George Knapp and his he went in there and did research with the team of scientists and what they found, and then the theories. There's so many fucking theories on this place. It's bananas. I would love if I could get into this place. If I could go there and spend like a few nights.
You can't now. It's part of a TV show.
Well, maybe I am him, and I'm just trying to lead us in the final episode to let you all know.
If you are a billionaire buying up real estate, hook a guy up, please.
I'm a billionaire, and I'm like, Patreon. Thank you for joining our Patreon.
Here's the thing, billionaires would. Don't pretend. Billionaires would be like, I need the cash.
Just give me a little backyard I can run around in.
Right,
somewhere I can grill some dogs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And ladies, that's it. That's the setting, man. That's the setup for diving into Skinwalker Ranch and the actual experiences happening there, which is going to be, I can't wait.
How much is known about that original
true.
family from the 50s?
Nothing.
Zero. That's a big.
They're an unknown couple that owned it. We don't
When
know
did
who
reports
they are.
of paranormal activity start?
Well, we have the ones in the 1770s from the journal and whatnot. But it was after the Gorman family moved in.
Yeah, the family that left
lived there, that took the ranch. Because remember, the old couple only showed up like once a year to do things. Nobody actually slept and lived at the ranch while the old couple owned it.
I still want to know what they were doing. I still want to know what they did for 50 years, because even in the 1800s,
it's probably the most boring answer, dude. It's probably just like they owned land that was either family inherited and they just didn't want it anymore because they didn't want to fly out there anymore or whatever.
Well, I would still love to hear about it, just because I know it's probably like impossible to find info on them, but the reason it's interesting to me is because they owned it for 50 years.
Yeah,
and
they owned it
the next people that bought it were out in less than 2.
Yeah, a year and 3 months they were in and out.
And
there's stories of them being like him trying to hunt one of the orbs through the woods, and every time like he
Don't
goes
spoil it. Don't spoil it.
Fuck. I want to talk about it.
Don't spoil.
All right,
Look,
all right.
it's you're the one who wants to split this up into different episodes.
Yeah, no, because if I go into that, it'll be another hour and a half. I can't do that. I can't do 3-hour eps. We just can't do it. So, or 2-hour eps. We'll package that up in a nice package of 1.5 hours next week. That's it. That's where I'm wrapping it up. I'm even more excited to keep going.
Dude, look, this is one of the most interesting mysteries to me because of how active, but not just active, just how weird everything is at this place. And I know that I'm hyping it up a lot, but honestly, like what we said at the beginning of this episode of like everything kind of coming together, all the big things that we've touched on.
Yeah, everything, like all the weird paranormal stuff from ghosts to UFOs.
I don't believe this.
Cryptids.
I don't believe this is. You're telling me this one spot is like, all right, so this is like the Olive Garden of ghosts and Bigfoots and aliens, and like they all come together, eating
Jesse,
good in the neighborhood or whatever,
getting
salad and breadsticks. You're telling me
this
this
is
what
of
happened?
the original Monster Mash that guy saw when he wrote the song.
Yeah, that's what he came to Skinwalker Ranch, and that's how he wrote the song.
He was like,
no, episode 1 was for you, dude. This was all facts, history, a general straight, because next episode, those go away. I
don't even believe that most of this was facts. I'm gonna be real with you.
What are you
this
talking?
is all facts.
I don't know that I believe half of this is being facts.
I think I confused it in the middle when I was talking about graveyards, but I understand now. I thought you meant that they turned it into a Buffalo Soldier graveyard, but I realize now that what you're saying is that the Buffalo Soldiers who were stationed there just buried their dead there.
Yeah,
I get that now. I see that now.
Buffalo graveyard.
Yeah, it's the bottle hole in the basin. Put your bottle there when you're fishing.
We will be back next week. We got to go record a minisode for
Aliens
Patreon.
in America.
Yeah.
For those who are wondering, as this episode, this 5th minisode goes up on Patreon, the other 4 are being bundled together and being put out as an episode. So you'll be seeing that upcoming, and then this episode will be Patreon exclusive as well. And basically, once we have a bundle ready, we'll kind of go in that order from here on
just
out.
To be clear, you're not missing out on anything if you're not paying money.
Correct.
Eventually it will all come to you, but right now, immediately after this, if you're on Patreon, there's a version of this that just continues for another 15 to 20 more minutes where we actually do more talking about stuff in the news. But I changed mine just now at the beginning of this episode from this guy in India to Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy, and we're going to talk about it today. Just now.
Boy.
Patreon.com/Chilluminati
Yeah. We're almost there. If we get to the $7,000 tier, we hire a researcher full time. That's our next goal. Go check it out. There's all kinds of fun rewards.
Researcher is like a relative term. You mean like person who read a book or two?
Well,
No,
it's still
actual
research.
person
Even
who
if
is-
even if the book is false, the researcher still had to read that shit.
No, but
You're right. You're right.
On top of that, both of the people that volunteer research, they're both like they do like one's a cancer researcher and the other one is in England doing.
Wait, time out.
Yeah,
Time out.
Yeah, dude.
When they could be saving all of us, they're like, I'll read up on this Skinwalker shit. You are a health epidemic. You're a problem.
Judy's working. That's Judy. She's working on the next big one after Skinwalker.
Judy,
Deanna's
you are so much better than this.
She's earning her master's degree. She's like does research.
You're
like,
both so much better than this. You
Listen,
don't. Oh my
I play
god.
Final Fantasy VII, and some people read 50 books about UFOs. It's Everybody's got to do something to take the edge off. You know what I mean?
Exactly. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter, Jesse Cox for Jesse, Fasciane A for Alex, and Mathis Games for myself, and Chilluminati Pod for the podcast as a whole. Subreddit as well by the same name, Chilluminati Pod. r/. And we crossed 1,100
Or just
reviews.
look up Adamantium Holdings because it's legitimately right there.
It's apparently right there.
It is.
Google Adamantium Holdings. We're right there.
Yeah, we're
ChilluminatiPod.com. Find us out.
Hell yeah. And if you review for us, we just crossed 1,100 reviews. Thank you so much. We appreciate that greatly. Let's keep those rolling. If you guys will listen, drop a review for us. It does a great deal. And we'll see you next week. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for supporting us.
Thank you very, very much.
Adamantium Holdings.
Flypaper.
The work of the people,
Owned by the people.
Supported by the people.
visit flypaper.fm.